welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick, with the City of Hampton's Communications and Marketing Department. And today we're going to talk with our favorite master gardener, Rhonda Graves. Rhonda's going to give us some tips about fall planting. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You know, you get to fall and you think, oh, it's time to pack everything up. I'm just going to clean out the beds and throw down some mulch and stop. But really, fall is a good time to plant, right?
It is. It's a good time to plant because the ground is going to be moister, hopefully with rains of the fall, and we're not going to have the heats of summer to stress the roots. So it gives you a chance to move plants that are perhaps in the wrong place, something that's too big or is being stressed by too much sun. That can be moved, or planting trees and shrubs. It's a great time so that they get established over the winter and are ready for the hot temperatures next summer. So.
Right. If you're trying to plant a bush or a tree in June and it doesn't have time to put down its roots and get really set before summer hits and you have a lack of rain and those crazy high temperatures, it's just not as good.
Right. It'll get stressed. You'll have to do a whole lot more watering. There's a chance you'll just lose it. Or you might get disease and pests too, so with the stressed plant. Just like with a person that's stressed is more likely to get sick. Same thing with plants. So.
All right. Well, let's talk then. Let's start with trees or shrubs, because I know you brought a couple of, well, maybe not trees, but you brought some shrubs today. And you guys, the Master Gardener program, really stress working with native plants. And why is that?
Oh, native plants offer a lot to the native animals. Well, beautyberry is a good example. It's not really a spectacular plant all year round.
But it's really pretty. Look at those berries.
It's got beautiful berries, and the mockingbirds love it. So it's a great food source for the birds in the fall. Goldenrod, which is in the back, this is just starting to bloom, but if you ride along the interstate, you see those golden patches of goldenrod. That's a great source for nectar for bees and other pollinators and butterflies. So this time of year, they're really storing up to get through the winter. So
now, goldenrod used to have a bad reputation as aggravating allergies, but I think, didn't they find that it really blooms at the same time as ragweed and some other things that are actually the problem?
Correct. Yeah, ragweed is really the culprit, and it's interesting if you look at plants and it's just starting to bloom. That yellow is just starting to pop out there. The things that are really bright are designed that way to attract the insects. The things that are pollinated by wind, like ragweed, you really don't notice them because they're either green or yellow, or pale yellow, like pine trees or eastern red cedars. Those are the ones that are pollinated by wind, and those are the ones that really just go right up your nose and into your lungs. So.
Right, and so nature has figured out that you need the bright colors to attract butterflies and bees, probably,
correct,
right?
Correct. Yeah, any of the pollinators, even moths. You have a lot of pollinators that are out at night, so they're things that bloom in the evening that are there to attract the moths. So, and they are important pollinators. So,
are there some other big shrub-type things people could look for that are native this time of year?
Sweet spire, Itea sweet spire is one. The wax myrtle, which is not a big bloomer, but it also has really nice berries, and that's a good example of something that looks really cute and small right now, but really read the label and make sure you're putting it in the right place because it can get quite large. So.
That is so important. I mean, those of us, like I live in a mature neighborhood, and a lot of the plants that were put in, I'm sure, 40 years ago fit the space, but now it's a struggle to, they're too close to the garage door, I can't open it, or, they just don't fit in the front bed anymore because they've outgrown it.
Correct. Yeah, there's some things that end up getting put in the wrong place and actually can benefit from a rejuvenation prune. Actually the beautyberry, you can see that cut back to the ground in late winter, early spring, and it'll come back strong. So butterfly bush is one that can be cut back to the ground if it's gotten too big.
And that's a gorgeous one too, and a nice one for the wildlife.
Correct. So,
of course, I find the wildlife benefit also from my blackberries and my blueberries. I got none at all this year. I am just not fast enough to get out there.
Yeah, and I think we talked about the squirrels too. That's always a problem. They've gotten more than their fair share this year. So.
Right.
But. One of the things to look for too is, this is a good example of a hosta that might have it's starting to look a little shabby, and I've seen plants around in some of the nurseries that are marked down, and if they're perennials, they may look a little shabby, but if you put them in the ground, again, it's a great time to plant them, and in the spring they'll come up and be beautiful. So.
And hostas are one of those, don't those go in a more shady location where it's sometimes hard to find something, but boy, once they get established, they're beautiful.
Correct.
And easy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very
I like
easy. Very easy. And there's something that will benefit from dividing every couple of years, like 4 to 5 years. Same thing with bulbs. This is a good time of year to put in bulbs like daffodils and tulips. Sometimes after a couple of years, they stop really blooming, and if you really look, they've multiplied, so it's a good time to divide them and perhaps share them with your neighbors or put them in another area. So.
I will say I just did my iris and my crocosmia and gave my mom half because it was too crowded. You know, you do have to do that every few years.
They definitely can multiply to where you have more than you really need or want. So, but that's good. Once you buy them,
I know you can give them away, or you can trade and get
correct.
Something a little different.
That's correct.
So what else do you have over here?
Well, this is a good time of year to, like you said, cleaning up the garden. It's good to get rid of those plants that might just might have some disease or insects, and to not put those in your compost, but go ahead and bag those up to go to the
Roses
landfill.
especially, once they get some fungus, you've just got to make sure those don't end up in the compost.
Right, and tomatoes is a good thing. So
not been a good year for tomatoes.
No, but actually it seems like this little bit of warm weather where they've come out. And one thing you can do with tomatoes, actually, if you're getting near the end of the season, you can actually pull off some of those blooms, and it'll help put the energy into the existing tomatoes, so they'll ripen up.
Oh, that's good.
And then there's always the fried green tomatoes option.
Always wonderful.
But by cleaning up your garden, you also can get rid of any insects or diseases that are harboring, in those plants, and hopefully cut down on your pests next year. This is a great time too to do soil testing. So you can add compost to your garden now, and that way it has time to acclimate to the garden. But to do a soil test, it's very easy to take a couple samples from the area that you're going to be testing, whether it be shrubs or trees
or grass. So you want to actually take those samples from that one. So
Correct.
You might need to do 2 or 3 different boxes. Like, here's my garden, here's my grass,
Correct.
Here's whatever.
Correct.
Front bed, back bed.
Exactly.
It can be very different.
If they're similar in nature, you can do the samples all together. But you want to take a couple samples, add them into a pail, like 10 different samples, and then you fill up your box to here. It's very important not to do it wet, because when this gets to Virginia Tech, it actually gets dried out, and if you do it wet, you're going to end up with just a brick coming out, so which is very hard to test. So, but the sample comes back. It actually goes to our local extension agent. She gets a report. You get a report, and then she can give you it'll give you all the recommendations for what you can add now, so it'll be ready in the spring when you're ready to plant. And we are having another vegetable class in November 14th. And that will be on soil preparation, site selection, that sort of thing, and planting. This is really a good time of year. You can look in all those seed catalogs and get an idea of what you want to plant next year. So.
Right, start your dreaming. But there are fall vegetables. I know that you've brought very, very tiny samples of some of the fall vegetables, because you can continue, to eat out of a garden here until close to Christmas, right?
Correct. Our first hard frost is hopefully middle of November or maybe December. But these plants like the kale, collards, lettuce is a great source. And a lot of these are very shallow rooted, so you can do just, if you have some old pots or a 5-gallon bucket with holes, you want drainage, an old dresser drawer with holes on it. You can do a little bed like that and have your greens. They love cold weather, and actually it said that things like collards actually have a sweeter taste to have a little bit of frost on them. So
really, and they almost don't grow here as a spring-summer crop because they burn out too fast.
They are an annual, and when it gets hot, they've decided that it's time to end and set seed, and they go to flower. So and then to seed. So
I have tried to go spinach repeatedly and never got the timing right, because I think that almost has to be a fall planting.
You can go ahead and plant it now,
Okay.
and that's one that can actually make it into the spring, and so you'll have a head start on the spring spinach. So.
Okay. Anything else you brought?
Well, there's a pepper in here, no, this is not an ornamental pepper. It's, I think, a Fresno pepper, and that's one of your hot weather plants. It does not want these cool temperatures. It's got a pepper on it. It'll still produce. That is a perennial. It's something that can go in the house, could go in the garage until the spring, and then you can put it back outside or put it in the ground. Yeah, it will be killed by the cold temperatures. Things like basil.
Yeah, I'm furiously making pesto.
Yes, this is a good time for
I've
that.
got a freezer full of pesto.
Good time for that. So.
And this is something I'm not familiar with.
This is a bellflower,
really
and it's just one of our little ornamental perennials. So another good example of a plant that is good to go in the ground now. So we have sedum autumn joy, and this is
that's
something
really
that
pretty.
is a succulent, but it's got the very nice bloom on there, and I kind of had to shoo all the bees and butterflies off of it to pick it up to bring it in. So this is another good nectar plant. And the succulent like this too, they don't require a whole lot of moisture, so this is a great drought tolerant plant. So.
Now, what are some good sources in general to get plants like this? I know you all have plant sales in the spring and the fall.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Newport News, but the Virginia Living Museum tends to host plant sales. Where are some other sources?
Most of the master gardeners in the area have plant sales. In the spring and the fall, you could probably go to one every weekend. Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Williamsburg, I think this coming weekend there's a couple going on, so Native Plant Society and, like you said, the Virginia Living Museum. So,
and a lot of the commercial garden centers really have increased their stock of native plants and things that work well in the area, and it's a good place to go for advice too.
Oh, definitely, and it's interesting. There's a lot of information out. You can go online and look for things, but I think a lot of people go into nurseries and they see what's blooming, and that's what catches their eyes. But you really want to kind of look at the things that are not blooming right now, because those could be gorgeous in the spring, and you can really spread out the blooming season. And
right, and you can get some discounts for things that aren't in season but will look great later. You have to plan ahead and you have to think about it a little bit more.
And I know there are people that, a couple master gardeners, that they'll go to McDonald's or Anderson's or Lowe's, and they know the day that the plants come in, they know the buyers, they can check and find out what's coming in, what's going to go on sale next, and that way you're talking to people, what's going to work well. So.
That's great. That's very helpful. Well, Rhonda, thank you for coming by. And again, we can see your handiwork and some of the other master gardeners at Bluebird Gap Farm. You guys have a garden there, both a vegetable garden and some flowering plants, right?
That's correct. And you can also, if you have any questions, if you have an insect or a bug, or a disease, a plant that's having a problem, you can call the local office at 727-1400. And Megan Tierney is our agent, and she can answer any questions.
It's an amazing service. And I do want to congratulate you too. You mentioned that you just had how many hours have you volunteered so far to this program?
1,000 hours.
That's great. And volunteers like you really help out the rest of us who are flubbing our way through trying to plant and grow things. But thank you. Thank you for your help and your service to the community.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. I hope you've learned some tips of things you can plant this fall and keep your garden growing. Thanks.